we come to the time of our speaker, and there he is, Dr. Maulana Karenga. I want to read his bio before we introduce him. I was so glad when he called me back. I was like a little kid, you know. I became starstruck, you know. But he was kind. I want to just give you some highlights from his bio, and it is extensive. Dr. Maulana Karenga is professor and chair of the Department of Africana Studies at California State University, Long Beach. Dr. Karenga is the creator of the Pan-African cultural holiday, Kwanzaa, and the Nguzo Saba, the Seven Principles, and author of the authoritative text titled Kwanzaa, a celebration of family, community, and culture. Also, Dr. Karenga is an ethical philosopher, is a Seba Ma'at, a moral teacher in the Kawaida Ma'at tradition, and is the leading exponent of the Ma'atian ethical thought, having developed over the last 4 decades a creative and scholarly Kawaida interpretation of ancient Egyptian Ma'atian ethical thought as a living tradition and a useful philosophical option for critical reflection on the urgent issues of our time. An activist scholar, he is the chair of the organization US and the National Association of Kawaida Organizations and executive director of the African American Cultural Center, US, and the Kawaida Institute of Pan-African Studies, and also co-chair of the Black Community Clergy Labor Alliance, BCCLA. Dr. Karenga is also the author of numerous scholarly articles and books, including selections from the Hosea. And those of you that don't know, Hosea is one of our holy books here at Wose Community. Sacred Wisdom of Ancient Egypt, Essays on Struggle and Position and Analysis, Kawaida and Questions of Life and Struggle, Ma'at, The Moral Ideal in Ancient Egypt, A Study in Classical African Ethics, Introduction to Black Studies, 4th edition, and Odu Ifa, the Ethical Teachings. He is currently writing a major work on the social and ethical philosophy of Malcolm X entitled The Liberation Ethics of Malcolm X, Critical Consciousness, Moral Grounding, and Transformative Struggle. Dr. Karenga is the recipient of numerous awards for scholarship, leadership, serving, including the Presidential the Presidential Award for Outstanding Contribution to Black Studies, the Paul Robeson Zora Hurston Award for Scholarly Work, and the CLR James Award for Outstanding Publication of Scholarly Works, all from the National Council for Black Studies. He is also the subject of Dr. Molefi Asante's book entitled Maulana Karenga, An Intellectual Portrait. Sisters and brothers, let's take ourselves off mute. Let's put our hands together and welcome Dr. Maulana Karenga.
Hey, welcome, Dr. Karenga.
Welcome.
Master teacher. Very Ghani.
Ghani Saber Maulana, yes, sir.
Ghani.
Ghani, teach Kawaida Maulana.
Teach. Don't lighten up.
Yes, sir.
Let me start by saying Asante Sana, Asante Nyingi, Bari Asante Mchanga wa Pwani Harvard, which means thanks, many thanks, and compared to the many times we say thank, the number of grains of sand on the seashore. And I send this on behalf of my organization and myself to Minister Imhotep Akebula and the Wose Community Church for this invitation to come and share with you conversations about the sacred sources of our self-understanding, the Nguzo Saba and the 7 cardinal virtues of Mott. It's quite a lot to say, but when Minister Imhotep asked me to talk about both of them at the same time, usually I lecture one at each lecture, but I'm gonna try to squeeze it together to do it within this hour, and then we can have questions about what is interesting and what you would like to know. So let me start off as I usually say, karibuni ndugu na dada, jamaa, rafiki na wageni, mekuti jamaa yenu na mahali pa amani. Na tunawatakia baraka bila idadi na vitu vyote vizuri bila mwisho. Zaidi ya hayo, tunashuhudia kama watu wa Kiafrika kwamba kama mwanzo wetu ulivyokuwa mkuu na mwema, ndivyo watakuwa maendeleo yetu daima, ikiwa tuna thubutu kujitahidi kusema ukweli, kufanya haki na kutembea katika njia ya unyofu. And so I said, welcome, brothers and sisters, family, friends, and guests. Among us, you will always find your family in a peaceful place, and we wish for you blessings without number and all good things without end. And we bear witness as an African people that as our beginning was great and good, so shall our development throughout eternity be, if we dare struggle, speak true, do justice, and walk in the way of righteousness. And so we do, Tambiko, always. You've done it. This is just reaffirmation of our honor to our ancestors. We offer sacred words and water, practicing the morality of remembrance. Surely it is written in the sacred text of our honored ancestors that to do that which is of value is forever. A person called forth by their good work do not die, for their name is raised and remembered because of it. And so we raise and remember and praise the names of the great ones in the history books, and also the great and loved ones in our daily life, who also brought a great and enduring good in our lives and in the world. We raise and praise the names of those who were so tall that when they stood up, they were the heights of mountains, and when they lay down, they were the lengths of rivers. And we raise up also the extraordinary, ordinary loved ones who gave ground, enhanced meaning, and goodness to our lives. So we call the name of our honored ancestors. Homage to you, beautiful Black and radiant spirit. You shall always be for us glorious spirits in heaven and a continuing powerful presence on earth. You are counted and honored among the sacred ancestors. Your name shall endure as a monument, and the good you've done on earth should never perish or pass away. Hotep, Ashe, Hedi. We are living, as all of y'all know, in dangerous, difficult, demanding, and unsettling times. In times like these, there's a tendency to believe that all is lost, and one can only despair, give it up, and seek to settle for a comfortable place in oppression. But such a position goes against the whole of our history, in fact, the whole of our humanity. For we have lived through worse times, rescue me if I'm wrong, the Holocaust of enslavement and the savagery of legal and social segregation with all its barbaric violence on every level. And yet we did not as a people break or back down or cry surrender, but rather continued the struggle, kept the faith, and held the line. And we did this not simply for ourselves, Black people, but also in honor of our ancestors, to secure and sustain freedom, justice, and equity for our people, and to ensure a future and world of inclusive and expansive good for those who would come afterwards. Against all odds, we took Nana Howard Thurman's advice and rode the storms and remained intact. We learned the lessons of Nana Gwen Brooks and constantly conducted our blooming in the noise and whip of the whirlwind. And by the way we lived our lives, did our work, and waged our struggles, we reaffirmed Nana Nanny Berra's description of us as a people who specialize in the wholly impossible. And thus, we turn to our history and honored ancestors always and seek to delve deep into the legacies and libraries of lessons they have left us in written text, spoken text, and living practice text. Indeed, they are the sacred sources for our rightful self-understanding and self-assertion in the world. I'm sorry. But as African Americans and African people, we have an unavoidable and compelling obligation to remain a critical, moral, and social vanguard in the struggle to expand the realm of human freedom, justice, and other human good, and to ensure the well-being of the world. We cannot, Black people, we cannot withdraw from the battlefield until the struggle is won. Our obligation is not to escape, but to engage, not to flee, but to fight, and not to surrender, but to dare and achieve victory. We must defend and free the people and protect and preserve the environment, as Kawaida, the Husia, and the Odu Ifa teacher. For Odu Ifa says to us, let's do things with joy, Black people. Let's do things with joy, for surely humans have been divinely chosen to bring good in the world. And this, we say in Kawaida, is a fundamental mission and meaning of human life. And as we struggle to bring good in the world, one of the greatest continuing challenges of our lives, Black people, in both ordinary and extraordinary time, is to know how to live a good life and then to actually live it in a conscious, committed, and determined way. In other words, we are challenged now and always to create space to do and experience good in the world, regardless. I said irregardless. However, such a practice proves itself difficult if we lack a guiding philosophy which defines the meaning and measure of a good life and urges us to pursue and practice it in the way we live our lives, do our work, and wage our righteous and relentless struggle to be ourselves and to free ourselves and always bring and sustain good in the world.
Yes.
Kawaida philosophy, an African-centered philosophy of life, work, and struggle, offers a foundation and framework for such a pursuit and practice. Although I began to develop Kawaida out of my research and studies in college, it was grounded, grew, and began to fluid in the midst of the ideological and practical struggles of the 60s. And it is out of Kawaida that I created the Nguzo Saba in 1965, and then Kwanzaa in 1966 to introduce and teach the Nguzo Saba and the culture and history in which they are rooted. And then, of course, always to celebrate the awesome meaning of being African in the world. Kawaida defines itself as an ongoing synthesis of the best of African sensitivities, thought, and practice in constant exchange with the world. It roots itself in ancient and modern text, written, oral, and living practice text, and it extracts from and builds on the sacred wisdom, instructive insight, deep thinking, and shared experience of our people and culture, ancient and modern. At the heart of Kawaida's philosophy are the Nguzo Saba, drawn from wide-reaching research of African sacred wisdom in search of foundational moral and spiritual values by which we could ground ourselves, orient ourselves, and direct our lives toward good and expansive ends. At the heart of this concept is that Africa is our moral, spiritual, and social idea. Africa at its best, at the best of what it means to be African and human in the fullest sense. Martian ethics is another one of these bodies of sacred wisdom from which Kawaida draws and on which it builds and expands its understanding of and engagement with life and the world. What I want to do here then is to take each of these bodies of sacred wisdom and pose them as sacred sources of foundational ways we can usefully and fruitfully understand and assert ourselves as African people, persons, and people in the world. And I want to do this starting with the Nguzo Saba, which I conceived and advanced in the 60s as a Black value system, an African value system. I offered it as a central pathway forward for us in our dual struggle to be ourselves and free ourselves. And I argued then, as I do now, that we can't free ourselves if we don't be ourselves. And we can't fully be ourselves until we fully free ourselves. And I want afterwards to turn to Mott and Martian ethics, which I, along with my organization, argued should be the central focus in our engagement with Kemet, ancient Egypt, regardless of other areas of study we are engaged in. To facilitate this and to open the dialogue on it, we planned, financed, and hosted the the first annual Ancient Egyptian Conference here in Los Angeles, bringing together attendees from 75 cities in February 1984. There we co-founded and named the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilization, ASCAC, developed its symbol, and edited and published its first literature, and co-led it to its early national and international status. And so let us talk now about Nguzo Saba, lifting up and living the Nguzo Saba, which is a daily discipline and determined practice. Nguzo Saba, as you know, are most known as the 7 principles of Kwanzaa, the Pan-African holiday, which is a celebration of family, community, and culture. And both Kwanzaa and the Nguzo Saba are practiced by millions of African people throughout the world, African community on every continent in the world. In addition to the millions of persons in the world African community who recite, discuss, and organize their lives around the Nguzo Saba during the 7 days of Kwanzaa, thousands of organizations also use them as fundamental value system for their members and various projects they develop. Indeed, most independent African American schools and rites of passage program also use Nguzo Saba as value orientation and value grounding. Conceived and forged in the fires and furnace of the Black freedom struggle of the 60s, and rooted in a radical history of resistance and community building, development, maintenance, the Nguzo Saba offer a value system and language which reflect and reaffirm this history and culture of struggle. Therefore, the Nguzo Saba explanation for each principle give us language of work and service, commitment, institution building, and righteous and relentless struggle. These principles call on us to be committed and to have a committed and sustained practice of striving and maintaining, defining, naming, and creating, building, active caring and problem solving, sharing responsibility and benefit, developing and demonstrating an active faith in the righteousness and victory of our struggle. My creation of Kwanzaa and Nguzo Saba is thus a self-conscious commitment to return to our own history and to recover the enduring richness of our own culture, its values, insights, and instructive practice, and to use it as a constant resource to inform, enrich, and expand our lives. In this regard, the 7 principles focus on African family, community, and culture, but they also have a meaning and message for society and the world. Indeed, they speak to the best of what it means to be African and human in the fullest sense, and offer a path to shared good for us as a people and for the whole community. Thus, it is in the process of seeking to create and practice good in the world that we turn to the Nguzo Saba, the 7 principles, as a fundamental framework and foundation for our self-understanding and self-assertion as Africans in the world. These principles provide us with a cultural value system that calls on us to have the courage to care, Black people, the courage to think deeply about what's going on in the world, and to enter the field of action, as Nana Maria Stewart, our formerly said, with a willingness to work and struggle hard to build the world we want and deserve to live in. In a word, the intention of the value system in Nguzo Saba, like the intention of the holiday Kwanzaa, and which it is the hub and hinge on which the holiday turns, is to remember and access the African in us. Remember, I said to remember and access the African in us, the ancient and ongoing wholeness, beauty, goodness, and sacredness of ourselves, and to use this, Black people, not only to develop and come into the fullness of ourselves, but also to increase and sustain African and human good and the well-being of the world. This requires embracing the Nguzo Saba, the 7 principles, as a continued daily discipline and determined practice, using and embracing them as moral imperatives, obligations born of history, our struggle, and an active concern about the current conditions of our lives, and forging a new and expansive future of maximum human freedom and flourishing. And as we embrace and practice these principles, we not only transform the conditions of our lives as a people in liberating ways, we also transform ourselves. Moreover, we contribute to the repairing the world, making it more beautiful and beneficial than we inherited, and ensuring the sustained well-being of the world. And Nguzo Saba were offered and engaged in is central to our liberation and bringing good in the world. These are the essential ethical values and principles of life and living. Umoja, unity, Kujichagulia, self-determination, Ujima, collective work and responsibility, Ujamaa, cooperative economics, NEA purpose, Kuumba, creativity, and Imani faith. These values are communitarian, that is to say, they stress interrelatedness, togetherness, caring, cooperation, collaboration, other directedness, and striving and struggling for a shared and expansive good for all. And always they require constant practice in the small and larger circles of our lives and the world. First principles of Umoja. The principle of Umoja says to strive for and maintain unity in the family, community, nation, and race. It encourages a profound sense of relatedness, togetherness, and oneness in the small and larger circles of our lives. Umoja fosters a spirit of togetherness and moral sensitivity, which encourages us to avoid injuring each other and the world, and to eagerly work and struggle for the common good. Indeed, the principle of unity reminds us of the ancient ethical teachings of Odu Ifa, that the greatest good comes from our gathering together in harmony, whether in family, friendship, community, society, or the world. And this too, Black people, the principle of unity teaches us we live in a web and world of interdependence, and that freedom, dignity, well-being, and other good should and must be shared goods for everyone, if there's to be any peace, any justice, any security for anyone in the world. The principle and practice of Umoja also teaches them an ever-expanding sense of self through sense of oneness with others and with the world. With others, we are fellow human beings, Watu, with obligations of mutual respect, with reciprocal solidarity and cooperation for common good. And in our relationship with the world, we are world beings. The Swahili word is walimwengu, not just Watu, human being, but walimwengu, world being, deeply embedded in the natural as well as social world, interrelated, interdependent, and unavoidably responsible for the health, wholeness, and well-being of other humans as well as the world, and all in it. Thus, we understand that damage to the world is damage to us. And ecocide is a form of genocide, the end of all of us and all things. Kuchishagalia's second principle teaches us to define ourselves, name ourselves, create for ourselves, and speak for ourselves. It teaches us what? To define ourselves. How? By the good we do and the dignity-bearing way we walk in the world. It teaches us to name ourselves in reverent respect for our history and our highest value. It teaches us to create for ourselves in the life-affirming, world-preserving ways of our ancestors. And it teaches us to speak for ourselves in the ways that bring forth the best of our culture and reaffirm our ancient and ongoing commitment to bring and share good in the world. Kuchishagalia also teaches us that we must constantly dialogue with our culture, asking it questions and seeking from it answers in our continuous quest to live full, free, and meaningful lives, and to make a worthy contribution to the ongoing struggle to be ourselves, free ourselves, and to bring, sustain, and increase good in the world. The principle and practice of Kuchishagalia, self-determination, as Nana Haji Malcolm teaches us, is to see for ourselves, see for yourself, and listen for yourself, and think for yourself. And this is to be done, not in isolation, Black people, but in community and in the midst of struggle for justice and freedom and good in the world. It means not being satisfied with prevailing established order thought or speech, but doing deep thinking about the current conditions and future of the world. And as our ancestors taught, think deep about what is good for the people and for the future of the world. Ujima, collective working responsibility, means to build and maintain our community together, to make our brothers and sisters' problems our problem, and to solve them together. The principle and practice of Ujima, collective working responsibility, urges acceptance of the shared responsibility to work together for good in the world, the good of freedom and of justice and equity and peace and mutual caring and cooperation and building the good world we all want and deserve to live in and leave as a legacy worthy of the name in history African. It is a work and struggle that require a genuine and sustained moral sensitivity to others again, to their aspirations for the good, as well as an ethical commitment to the well-being of the world and to the struggle to achieve both. This principle teaches us that we are responsible to and for each other, that we must build the world, I repeat, that we want and deserve to live in, And that is a work which requires a profound and persistent ethical sensitivity to the needs and aspirations of others, I repeat. That's the problems of poverty, homelessness, unemployment, crime, early death, racialized justice, the pandemic of COVID-19, and the support of its survivors, and the care for the families of its victims must not be approached simply as isolated, personalized tragedies and unfortunate problems for others. Rather, they must be understood and engaged as problems which we all are affected by and responsible for solving. Thus, it is important for us, Black people, to accept our concern for the oppressed must be expressed in a sustained practice to free them. That our anger at injustice must be reflected in our active resistance to it. And that our preference for the poor must be linked to a practice which alleviates their poverty and aims toward an end to it. Ujamaa, the fourth principle, Ujamaa, cooperative economic, to build and maintain our own stores, shops, and other businesses, and to profit from them together. The fourth principle, Ujamaa, urges us to practice the principle of shared work and shared wealth in the world. It begins with a call to build and maintain together in cooperative economic institutions, and by extension, engage in economic practices that address our needs and aspirations and represent the best of our values as African persons and a people. And certainly the central values here are cooperation for common good and the collective sharing of the good we produce. Moreover, the principle of Ujamaa speaks to a sense of kinship. Listen now, kinship we must feel for each other and the world. That's how we share, we feel for each other. The root word of Ujamaa is Jamaa, which means family in Swahili. Thus, it is for us to engage in economics practices which recognize and respect our kinship with other humans and with the world. It thus opposes activities which exploit and oppress others and damage the world. Again, upholding the principle and practice of Ujamaa teaches us the essential values of shared work and wealth and the right of everyone to a life of dignity and decency. It urges us to cultivate a kinship in and with the world, to reject artificially created conflicts between a robust economy and a rightful relationship with the environment. And it teaches us respect of the earth as shared sacred space and common good, not to be plundered, polluted, and depleted by corporations' greed and aggression and consumers' consumption without consideration of the consequences that this causes. Now, Dr. George Washington Carver, who was an environmentalist before the word was coined, was deeply concerned about both social justice and the well-being of the world. And he taught her to love nature, to listen to his speech, and to learn his language and lessons for the good of humans and the world. And he asked her not to hoard, not to monopolize, not to be greedy in our relationship to the common shared good of the world, but to be those, quote, who take their share of the world and let other people have theirs. Furthermore, as cooperative pursuit of common good, Ujamaa is profoundly concerned with an egalitarian distribution of wealth and good in the world, and with care for the poor and the vulnerable, as I've said before. Indeed, the Hosea, the sacred texts of our ancestors of ancient Egypt, Kemet, teaches us that, quote, we are given wealth so we can do good with it. Thus, the ethical understanding of our traditional text and the awesome insight of our honored ancestors urge us beyond the crass consumerism of the marketplace, the isolated individualism and the market-driven madness of acquisitiveness, posing it as a substitute for actual and longed-for freedom. We are not free in buying, right? We're not free in buying and acquiring and becoming enslaved to capitalist propaganda and called advertisement. Nia means to make our collective vocation the building and development of our community in order to restore our people to their traditional greatness. Now, the principle of Nia, purpose, teaches us to develop a collective vocation as a people which has as its core aim and end the restoration of our people to their traditional greatness. Here, however, Black people, it is important to recognize that in the best of African ethical tradition, greatness does not lie in material world. It does not lie in military might or even scientific and technological knowledge, but in the good we do with what we have. Thus, Hosea said, the wise are known by their wisdom, but guess what? The great are known by their good deeds. The wise are known by their wisdom, but the great are known by their good deeds. So when we talk about greatness for our people, returning them, it's how to get them to do good in the world, to bring and sustain good in the world. Indeed, our honored ancestors taught that greatness is above all a moral conception and achievement in practice. This teaching then instructs us to move beyond the idol worship of wealth, technology, and science to questions and answers of how to put them in the service of the masses of our people who need them most, as Nana Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune urges us to do. She taught us that the moral imperative for us who know and continue to learn is to, quote, discover the dawn and to bring this material within the understanding of our youth and the masses of our people who need it most. It is thus in doing good in and for the world that greatness is achieved, and it is service to others and to the world that opens the way to greatness, as all great women and men in our history have taught and demonstrated in righteous deeds. Also, in embracing the principle and practice of Nia, we foreground and foster the ancient moral teaching of the Odu Ifa, that if we should do things, we should do it with joy. For surely humans have been divinely chosen to bring good into the world. And this is the fundamental mission and meaning of human life, as I've said above. And it reminds us that even as we're chosen by history and heaven to bring good into the world, we must also choose to do it. It means audaciously choosing the good for the world and acting accordingly. This means choosing in thought and practice love over hate, peace over war, freedom over unfreedom, justice over injustice, sharing over hoarding, and liberation from oppression of all kinds, forms, and fashions. Kuumba, to do always as much as we can in the way we can in order to leave our community more beautiful and beneficial than we inherit. This principle and practice of Kuumba invites and urges us to reach inside ourselves, Black people, constantly bring forth the best of what it means to be African and human in the world, and to open new ways to understand and assert ourselves in dignity affirming, life enhancing, world preserving ways. I said dignity affirming, life enhancing, and world preserving ways. Here we are to be placemakers and waymakers, who through creative imagination and transformative action open spaces and ways for others which point toward a new history and future of humankind in harmony with the world. We are to see this repair, this renewal and remaking as both a social initiative and an environmental one. For again, issues, impact, and outcome are interrelated and interdependent. It raises up the ancient African ethical imperative of the Hosea to practice what I created a term called Surut Ta, to constantly repair. It's a term in a concept, to constantly repair, renew, and remake the world, making it more beautiful and beneficial than we inherit. Therefore, the Martian concept, Kawaida Martian concept, and practice of Surut Ta requires that in our relations with each other and other humans and the natural world, we must what? Raise up what is in ruins, repair what is damaged, rejoin what is separated, replenish what is depleted, strengthen what is weakened, set right what is wrong, and make firm and fluid that which is fragile, insecure, and undeveloped. And that's in our personal and social relationship, as well as our relationship with the world. Imani is the last principle. It means to believe with all our hearts in our people, our parents, our teachers, our leaders, and the righteousness and victory of our struggle. I could have put to believe in God. That's not the problem. I think everybody does that. The question is, do you believe in each other? Do you believe in your people, right? You say, Hosea said, the good you want to do for God, do it for the people, especially for the poor and the vulnerable, for God stands satisfied when the poor and vulnerable are cared for. So finally, the principle and practice of Imani faith. Oh, and our honored ancestor, Dr. Mary McLeod Nana Mary McLeod said, faith in God is the greatest, but great too is faith in ourselves. Why wouldn't we, if we argue, as the ancient Egyptians taught the world, we are in the image of the divine, came from his and her very person, came from the very person of the divine. Why wouldn't we? Okay, so why wouldn't we believe in ourselves? And it's because of oppression, right? Finally, the principle and practice of Imani faith teaches us and urges us to believe in our people and the good we see, to strive and struggle for and in our capacity to achieve and share that good. It teaches us, Imani teaches us, to reaffirm the good by reaffirming the goodness, sacredness, and beauty of ourselves, Black people, as African persons and people. I'm not going to sit here and argue about the greatness of God. The question is, will you say and feel and demonstrate your own greatness in honor of God and in honor of your people and your history, right? And your culture. And it encourages us to believe in the righteousness and victory of our struggle to bring and sustain good in the world. It also urges us to believe in the coming good of the future and our young people's will, consciousness, capacity, and commitment to forge this future and to share it in equitable and caring ways. For we and they, our children, and what we do during this crisis and long after, or actually the future unfolding, we are all the future unfolding through the transformative power of righteous and relentless struggle to bring good into the world and not let any good go. And again, always we must together and transgenerationally build the good world we want and deserve to live in and leave as a legacy worthy of the name and history African. Moreover, the principle of Imani teaches us to embrace the beautiful and unbreakable faith of our forefathers and our foremothers who believed in the good and its eventual triumph. Our ancestors, our honored ancestors, who linked their faith to hard work, their hope to righteous struggle, and their prayers to transformative practice in and for the world. This faith I talk of, Black people, this Imani is a faith founded and forged in the millennia of righteous and relentless struggle of our people, and it is tested and tempered in times of increased oppression, seemingly hopelessness, and delayed victories and setbacks and betrayal and desertion that would have defeated those less steadfast and determined. But this faith of ours shelters no illusion and knows no insight and experience that practice knows from insight and experience that practice proves and makes possible everything, and that only righteous and relentless struggle will redraw the map of human history that leads to a hard-won world of kindness and caring, mutual respect, justice, peace, well-being, security, substantive freedom, and rightful flourishing. In a word, ongoing African and human good, and the sustained well-being of the world and all in it. Hotep, I say it. So the next part of this is a discussion the time left of the 7 cardinal virtues of Mott, right? This is important development. In 1984, our organization, us, and our African American Culture Center focused on how could we strengthen the movement by building our relationship? Because we argued that relations are the hub and hinge on which the whole of human life turns. Got a bad relationship, you got a bad day and a bad future. Got strong, firm, and reaffirming relationship, you got a good day for struggle, for work, for love, for life, and a good future, right? So we say, how do we do from the beginning? And we said values are everything. That's why we have the 7 in Guzo Sab, the 7 principles, right? And then within that, we teach these other aspects from sacred wisdom. So Guzo Sab is always the overarching concept, right? And we bring in sacred wisdom from Odu Ifa, from Hosea, from other texts written text, oral text, living practice text, but they're all to improve the quality of our relationship. We come into being in relationship, Black people, right? Before we're born, we're in relationship with our past, we're in relationship with our present, and we're in relationship with our future. And every relationship has an obligation. Everyone has an obligation. And so we said, here is another way we can introduce it. So that is why we conceived of the idea of having a first ancient Egyptian conference, having ASCAC, the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilization, and for using that to strengthen both movement and community life. Okay. So my development and teaching of the 7 cardinal virtues of Mott is rooted in Kawaii's position that Africa is our moral idea, and Kemet is an excellent source for doing the intellectual archaeology we need to engage that idea. And again, I chose to embrace, engage, and advance the principle and practice of Ma'at as an essential foundation and framework for understanding and pursuing the idea. To achieve this working goal, my approach is defined by several aspects. It is, first of all, Afrocentric, African-centered, from an African standpoint. That is to say, a worldview rooted in the cultural image and human interests of African people. Second is critical corrective for the reductive and incorrect approaches to ancient Egypt, both in popular culture and in the academy. There are at least 5 fundamental ways that the academy and the popular culture engage ancient Egypt. First, they start with mummification, right? They talk about the history of mummies, right? Then they go into mythologization. And, it's just, all of it is mythology. They don't see Martian theologies. They see Egyptian mythology. Now, they don't call Abrahamic traditions mythology. They call that religion and theology. But to get to Africa, they see mythology. We argue it is theology, right? And ethics. That was our point. Monumentalization, okay? Don't deal with the intellectual contribution that Egypt made. Deal with these other things. Not that they are not important. Certainly, this represents science, technology, deep thought, right? But guess what? That's not all Egypt. How did they build these? That's what I'm wanting to know. And it was built on an ethical basis. Then demonization. The Abrahamic traditions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam demonized Egypt as the land of land of bondage. But in fact, Egypt was, before its demonization, considered by Jew, Gentile, Hittite, Hyksos, Roman, Greek, Persian, Libyan, a center of knowledge. In fact, it was called by the world, first of all, the temple of the world because of its deep spirituality, right? The navel of the world because of its creation of so many things, and the light of the world because of its knowledge. So we call the light of the world, the navel of the world, and the temple of the world. The light of the world because of its knowledge, navel of the world because of its creativity of so many new things. And then the temple of the world because of its deep spirituality and ethics. And that is what I spent the last decades developing, is this appreciation of the deep thought, spiritual and ethical thought of ancient Egypt in contrast to this demonization. Then there's Europeanization, right? Egypt is taken out of Africa. First, Africans are taken out of Egypt. Egypt is taken out of Africa, and Africa is then taken out of human history. That's how they try to negate. So the third thing I want to do is not only do the African-centered, do the correction, but I want to do what I call a Sankofa, Kawaii's Sankofa of retrieval and reconstruction, revealing the richness, complexity, and expansive character of Kemetic African culture and achievement. I want to retrieve and reconstruct the moral idea of Mott as a definitive expression of classical African ethic and pose it as a philosophical and ethical option for engaging the critical issues of our time. See, that shows what you think about Egypt. If you use it to engage the critical issues of our time, if you're African, what does Africa have to say about what it means to be a man, a woman, how to raise your children, right? About the world, about the environment. What does Africa have to say? We have to study these things. And then finally, I want to pursue the initiative as an open textured one, an ongoing process of reconsideration and renewal. The teaching of Martian ethical tradition found in the sacred text of Hosea is unlimited, but that's one of the reasons I, in my organization called the conference for founding conference for ASCAM, is to introduce the Hosea, right? To say, here's a work, here's a way to go. People in the movement had said, we need a Black Bible. We said, no, we don't need a Black Bible. That's Christianizing African culture, and many Africans aren't Christian. Plus, you never do that in a multicultural. No one would say that Bible, no Muslim would say the Bible is a Christian Quran. You wouldn't say that. You got to be able to say these are all sacred texts, and we have sacred texts. I was rushing, or I would have showed you the different kind of sacred texts, and I knew I wouldn't have as much time because there was so much on in good and stuff. But anyhow, I edited. I thought I could do this in 20 years. I was going to put this book together in 20 years. It's been actually almost 40, close to 40, right? And I have not been able to finish it because I'm doing other things. You know, I'm an activist intellectual. These teachings expand, but I'm going to finish it. These teachings span the vast body of writings on spirituality and ethics left by the ancient Egyptians. And I wanted to read the ancient Egyptian texts themselves, see what their voice is before the coming of the problem from Europe. Currently, only a brief selection of this immense corpus, as I said, exists in the text, selections from the Hosea Sacred Wisdom, ancient Egypt. But a larger text is in the process, as I said, and will include the full forms of major ethical and spiritual teachers of ancient Egypt. I got to stay with my text, or you really going to run out of time. The name of the text is a combination of two words: who, authoritative creative speech, and seer, exceptional insight. Thus, Hosea translate as authoritative creative speech of exceptional insight. According to the Martian creation narrative, these are the two main powers by which Ra, God, created the world. He conceived it in his infinitely insightful heart and mind. Notice I said heart and mind, because the word "if" means both heart and mind. And then spoke the creative words which brought the world into being. Thus, the divine or sacred texts are called the Hosea, as developed by myself, who define my intellectual work as initiative, as a Kawida Martian tradition. So Mott, the starting point for any critical and meaningful discussion of Mott and tradition is the concept of Mott. A critical study of its use in Kemetic, moral, and spiritual literature indicate that Mott has multiple meanings. But essentially, Mott means rightness in the spiritual and moral sense in three realms: the divine, the natural, and the social. In another sense, it is an interrelated order of rightness, which requires and is a result of right relation with and behavior toward the divine, toward nature, and toward other humans. In this context, Mott is also a way of rightness defined by the seven cardinal virtues: truth, justice, propriety, harmony, balance, reciprocity, and righteous order. Sometimes people change, though. You shouldn't change an author's work. It's not good to do that. If you want a whole new set of principles, make them up. But you don't need to change the seven principles in Guzo Saba. You don't need to change the seven cardinal virtues. This is the way I developed it. You know, this is an intellectual work. It's plagiarism to do that, right? Don't do that. You know, do something else. Get some other together. But if you're going to use this, then give attribution and do them in the order that they are. In the Hosea, the sacred text of Martian tradition, Saber Pratap said, "Established are those whose standard is Mott, who walk according to his way. They should surely prosper thereby." And Saber Kunampu said, "Speak truth, do justice, all Mott, for Mott is mighty, it is great, it endures, its worth is real, and it leads one to blessedness. Wrongdoing does not achieve its goal, but one who is righteous reaches dry land." Thus, Mott is a path and guide to a more meaningful and rewarding life. In this sense, it becomes a designation and criteria of the ideal world, the ideal society, and the ideal person: the Martian world, the Martian society, and the Martian person. Finally, Mott is our ultimate link with the ultimate idea, the divine. For by the practice, promotion, and defense of Mott, we come to embody it, and in embodying Mott, we assimilate the divine. As Queen Hatshepsut says with regard to God Amun-Ra, she said, "I have exalted Mott, which he loves, for I know he lives by it." Can you imagine? The divine lives by Mott. "Also, it is my bread, and I drink from its dew. I'm of one body with them. Complete harmony or oneness with Mott then becomes oneness with the creative force of the universe, which is both a blessing and the basis for eternal life in the afterlife in Martian tradition. So Mott is rightness or righteousness, an interrelated order of rightness in 3 realms. It is a moral idea, truth, justice, propriety, harmony, balance, reciprocity, and righteous order. First I had order, then I added righteous because sometimes people can confuse that with law and order, with conservative order. So Mott is righteousness, so it's righteous order. It's not just any order. An interrelated order of rightness of the divine, the natural, and the social. It's a way of right, a path that is clear, even for the unaware, the text said. And it is the condition and requirement for the ideal world, the ideal society, and the ideal person. Do Mott for the Lord of Mott, whose Mott is Mott indeed. When goodness is good, it is truly good. Surely Mott is for eternity, Kunampu said, Sabu Kunampu. It goes to the grave with those who do it when they are buried in the earth and bellowsome. The name is not erased from the face of the earth. They are remembered because of their goodness. This is a principle established by the word of God. So speak truth, do justice. Again, for Mott is mighty, it's great, it endures, its worth has been tested, and it leads one to blessedness. Wrongdoing does not achieve its goal, but one who is righteous reaches dry land. Talking sailing here. So how do we practice the 7 cardinal virtues? The Martian person is obligated to practice, defend, and promote the 7 cardinal virtues called Ikeru in ancient Egyptian. These are defined by me as truth, justice, propriety, harmony, balance, reciprocity, and righteous order. Repeatedly in the Declaration of Virtue, the moral self-presentation of the writers included these virtues. Okay, the Martian projects begin with truth and justice. To say Mott is to say truth and to say justice. Someone say, do justice, you say, do Mott. Speak truth, speak Mott. Therefore, Saber Anshishoki said, speak truth to everyone. Let it cling to your speech. And again, Kunampu, Saber Kunampu said, speak truth and do justice, for Mott is mighty, it is great. Then he says, do Mott, or do truth, do justice, do rightness in general, for the Lord of Mott. Propriety requires proper behavior, appropriate behavior, which enhances our relationship with others and the world. Here, gentleness of speech and conduct are key. Saber Pebor said, do not make your mouth harsh or speak loudly with your tongue, for a loud voice does damage to the members of the body like a disease. Pebor, in speaking to this central virtue of harmony and the role of responsiveness in it, said, hearing responsiveness is better than everything. Listen to that. Hearing is better than anything, for it creates goodwill. That's moral sensitivity. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, this concept of hearing. It reaches and it teaches reciprocal listening, hearing, and responding. For Patarsev says, if hearing enters the listener becomes a hearer. And he concludes that it is the heart, more sensitivity to others, that causes a person to hear or not hear. People, okay, people, okay. The virtue of harmony teaches us to strive for and practice a principled, peaceful, and purposeful together. Kawida Martian ethic teaches that living in harmony requires a sejemic person, one who listens, one who hears, and one who is responsive to others in speech and conduct. The word for hearing is sejem, and the hearer is sejemu. So we have to be a sejemic person. Now listen to what this means. The Kemetic word for sejem means to listen, hear, and comply. In Kawida Martian ethical philosophy, listening is rightful attentiveness. Hearing is empathetic understanding, and complying is appropriate action according to what is requested and required. I wrote a whole paper on the sejemic person, and I think that's a model person to hear, to listen, to hear, and to comply. Sejem, right? So again, listening is rightful attentiveness. When you're going to listen to somebody, pay rightful attention to them. If you're going to say, I heard you, you know, that is what? That you have empathetic understanding for something. So people say, I listened, but I didn't hear you. Did you hear me? Did you hear what I said? That means the person is asking for what? Empathetic understanding, right? And then finally, complying. Will you do anything? And that is appropriate action according to what is requested and required. Sometimes people might not even ask you what they need, but you can see it's required. And you're a systemic person if you haven't paid rightful attentiveness, given empathetic understanding, if you then, in appropriate action, do what is required. The virtue of balance stresses a measured approach to everything, avoiding excesses of any kind. The Husia says in the book of Pebor, those who apply the right measure of balance in all good things are not blamed. The God of just measure has created a balance in order to establish right measure on earth. He placed a heart deep in the body for the right measure of its owners. Use your heart, use your mind, be measured, right? Be balanced. He gives an example that, you take something that you use, and if it's too much, it's damaging. For example, he said, a board beyond its right measure must be cut off, and a wind does not blow in its right measure. Instead of sailing the ship, it wrecks the ship. So do things in the right measure. Say what Pebor says, thus if those who are learned are not balanced, their learning is of little use. And a fool who does not know balance does not escape misfortune. Excessive pride and arrogance are the destruction of their owner, but those who are gentle in character create their own fate. In conclusion, Kunampu, Sabre Kunampu teaches that the balancing of the land, the whole earth, lies in doing right, speaking truth, doing justice, caring for others, and walking in the way of rightness. The cardinal virtue of reciprocity is also central to Martian moral practice. Clearly, Kunampu's stress on reciprocity in our relations is important here. He said, desire to live long, for it is said, doing Mott is breath to the nose, breath to the nose. Thus he said, answer not good with evil, and put not one thing in the place of another. Give what you're given, return the goodness that you've given. Rather give as you're given and return the goodness done. Moreover, he encourages us to initiate reciprocity and reciprocal good by doing good, saying, do to the doer that he or she may also do. Perhaps the most instructive teaching on reciprocity is in the book of Lady Tarsat, which teaches the mutual benefit of doing good in the world and with implications for every virtue. She said, doing good is not difficult. In fact, just speaking good is a monument for those who do it. Those who do good for others are also doing it for themselves. Why? They are building the good moral community and world they want and deserve to live in. The seventh cardinal virtue is righteous order, a disciplined life, which aids in the highest degree of development and flourishing. The understanding in Kawaida is that without discipline, there's no development, not in the highest and most meaningful sense. Indeed, spiritual and moral discipline undergird and make possible the just and good world. For we speak here of rightful expected regularity of Mott doing in the world. In Kawaida Mott, discipline is defined as a self-imposed order of reasonable restraint and focus and sustained initiative directed toward excellence and development. Mott then is and ensures rightful order, and uncontrolled thought, emotion, speech, and conduct lead to and represent Isfet, chaos and evil, the opposite of Mott. Self-mastery and a just social order or interlinked and mutually productive and supportive of each other. Therefore, Mott tradition seeks to cultivate the Geru Mott, the truly self-mastered person. And one of the things I want to say right here to end this right section, Pebor says, one who has mastered the heart and mind has the equivalence of all the teachings. One who has mastered the heart and mind has the equivalent of all the teaching, because all the vices you want to avoid and all the virtues you want to achieve depend upon your mastering yourself and using your deep knowledge and beautiful energy for good in a balanced and beautiful way. One of the most impressive moral portraits of this Geru mind is the moral self-presentation of Antef, administrator of this state, who said in his declaration of virtue in the Husia, I'm self-controlled before the angry, patient with the unlearned in order to quell conflict. I'm calm, free from hasty act, anticipating the outcome, expecting what occurs. I'm one who counsels in situations of strife and one who knows which words incite anger. I'm considered when called upon to those who would tell me their concern. I'm self-disciplined, kind, considerate, one who comforts the weeper with good words. I'm friendly to those who count on me and one who does good to his peers. I'm one who is upright in the house of his Lord and one who recognizes flattery when it is spoken. I'm pleasant, open-handed, that means generous, a possessor of food who does not hide his faith from those in need. I'm a friend of the poor and favorable to the have-not. I'm one who feeds the hungry and the have-not, and one who is open-handed to those who are needy. I'm one who is informed to those who lack knowledge, and one who teaches a person what is useful to him or her. I'm upright in the house of the Pharaoh, one who knows what should be said in every office. I'm a listener, hey, one who listens to mine and who ponders it in his heart. I'm one who speaks in the house of justice and one who is skilled in speech in situations of the narrow mind and the constricted heart. Intef, son of Cinnamon, says, I'm a beloved servant, one who speaks truth and does not pass over his fault, disciplined in heart and mind in times of hate, confident in doing things in the midst of the people, one who does more than is asked of him, and one who is insightful, whose insightfulness is applied in every matter, one who hears and acts as asked. Moreover, he said, I'm one who performs efficiently as desired, an attentive hearer, sedemic, and a determined doer, thoughtful and eloquent, cool-headed and free from hate, a Martian person free from irreverence, one sensitive to pain and suffering, a man of integrity, upright and effective in actions. Reddy Noom says, I'm one who knows himself as a leader of people, a precious staff made by God, one who was endowed with excellence in planning and great nobility of performance, dignified, open-handed, pleasant-mannered, noble in appearance, and this is a beautiful one, godly to behold. One who observes the rule of conduct, right? Order, righteous order, kind-hearted, open-hearted and open-minded, clear thinking, friendly to the petitioner so that they may tell me their wish. A person of character spoken of with love by the people. And the woman's voice. I want to end with the woman's voice. It's so important, right? There's not many, as many women texts as there are male texts. So I wanted to just end with them. Lady Tanya says, I'm a possessor of character, one who is at the head of the people, one worthy and praised by her Lord, beautiful by what comes from her mouth, i.e. the truth she speaks, the Mott she puts forth, one who is valued to the king because of her Mott, because of the goodness she does, the justice she does, right? I entered as one praised and left as one loved. You know, you can enter and people be praising you, but what they say about you when you leave, right? So that's a beautiful thing. I entered as one praised and left as one loved. One whose speech reveals her virtues, right? We're talking virtues here. Cardinal virtue, one who speaks and it is done for her. Tani, a possessive worthiness. May I be justified before the great God. And Lady Tara said, do good. Doing good is not difficult. Just speaking good is a monument for those who do it. Indeed, those who do it for others are also doing it for themselves. I'm a woman worthy of being praised, a woman worthy of being honored, one who set out on the way and traveled on the way of the honored ancestors, one who put devotion to God in her heart when she was still a child and has held firm her whole life, one true of heart to the divine one, both male and female, a true daughter of her father and mother, one generous in gifts to one who said, would that I had about anything, wholesome of character, good of disposition, great of love with everyone, straightforward with the rich and just to the poor. She don't hold back. She speaks truth to the rich and she is just to the poor. One who still helps the living with her precepts and the poor with her property. Because it is written in the Husi, we're given wealth so we can do good with it. If you have goods you want to give to God, give them to the poor, for God stands satisfied when the poor are cared for. So out of all this, this is our duty, right? To know the Nguzo Saba, to know Mott, right? But to practice it. This is our duty then, to know our past and honor it, to engage our present and improve it, and to imagine a whole new future to forge it in the most ethical, effective, and expansive way. I repeat, in the most ethical, effective, and expansive way. And this too, Black people, as I always end with, continue to struggle, keep the faith, hold the line, love and respect our people and each other, practice the Nguzo Saba, seek and speak truth, do and demand justice, do might in the world. Be constantly concerned with the well-being of the world and all in it, and there help rebuild the overarching movement that prefigures and makes possible the good world we all want and deserve to live in, and leave Black people as a legacy worthy of the name and history African. Hotel, Ashe, Eri.
Ashe. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Karenga.
Ashe.
La la.
Absolutely. Wow.
Easy.
What knowledge, what knowledge.
Dr. Karenga.
Ashe.
Much love, much respect.
Thank you so much. Ashe.
Sisters and brothers, we've heard the word today. We've heard an expansive word of the 7 principles of the Nguzo Saba and the 7 ethical virtues of Mott.
7 cardinal virtues of Mott.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Asante, Karibu. I want to give a chance for people to ask questions now.
Teach.
And let's do this in an orderly way. I would like for you to raise your hand on the Zoom. You know, just go down there where it says reactions. Just click reactions and you can raise your hand. So I see 2 people already. And so the first one is,
Minister Ahmadi was up there first, I think.
Was he there,
Yeah.
Minister? Okay, let's go with Minister Ahmadi, then Minister Bill, and then Richard Leonard. Go ahead, Minister Ahmadi. Unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wonderful, powerful lecture. Just, allowing us to go deeper into that which we are studying. And so I have 2 really quick questions. One is there a period of time that you translated the Hosea? Was that like some people say, I've heard people say it was done during an intermediate period. So I'm like, what was it, like a dynasty, or is it just just overarching, the Hosea?
It's overarching. Appreciate what you said last. We start with the Old Kingdom, may go to the intermediate period, then the Middle Kingdom, then the New Kingdom, then the period of Persian and Greek domination, to the end of the civilization as we know it. Right? That's what we do. I don't do the Gnostic writings. Right? After I just stay with what the Egyptians wrote themselves, not what people said. I don't deal with secondary documents. I deal with primary documents, and that's the glyphs themselves.
Ashe. Well, thank you. And then real quickly, how does the 42 Confessions of Innocence, how does that relate to Mott and Mottian principles?
Mm-hmm. I have to come back and do a lecture. I have a whole lecture on that. But they are central because they represent these virtues. These virtues are transferred to the declarations of innocence. 36 and 42. There's 2 sets, A and B. What I'm going to do for the final Hosea is combine them, because some in the 42 is a repetition of the ones. But I want to make sure it's the same word, right? If it's not the same word, then I won't collapse it. But if it is, then I'm going to put it. I don't know how many finally it's going to be. I have to go over. I've been trying to work this out for some time. But yes, the 36 are the first ones. Those are everywhere. Then the 42 are the ones that come afterwards. So 36 and 42 can be collapsed. And I would do that eventually in the final draft of the Hosea, which is
Thank you.
open texture, by the way, open texture.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Saber. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Minister.
All right, Minister Bill Johnson has his hand, then Brother Richard, and then Sister Keisha.
Are there particular scholars or particular texts we should refer to or look to guidance for in using new technologies to grow ourselves and our Kawaida culture and to implement the Nguzo Saba in our lives?
I wasn't able to hear you as well, Minister Bill. Could you do that again?
Sure. Are there particular scholars or particular texts that we should refer to in expanding and using technology to empower ourselves in Kawaida?
Well, appreciating what you said, if I understand correctly, the person that, has done some important primary work on this is Dr. Jacob Carruthers, who was the first person I called when we were putting together the ASCAC conference, right? Because he knew the text. I'm not sure how many other people. There might be some new people, but I haven't related to them. We haven't been in contact, and I try to stay up with what people are writing, but I haven't seen any body of work that's consistent with the text. I hear commentaries, but a lot of times that's mixed up with claims that are not substantiated. And so that's a problem for me. And I know sometimes people get angry with me because of that, but I always asked you, if you say something that we believed, then can we say there's a text for it? A living practice text, or oral text, or written text. Most of the time we're dealing with Egypt, we got written text, so we don't have to try to interpret what they did. What we have to do is to interpret what they thought was the highest ideas. And so I don't know another scholar that is, first of all, I don't know any other scholar that is into ethical philosophy, not even Jake. Jake was more into theology. I'm more into ethics, right? So I'm in the ethical philosophy. You have to know theology to know ethics, because that's where the ethics come from. But in these divisions I'm making, surely for analytical preciseness, the ancient Africans, collapse all this, right? But I need to do it to say this. So again, just to sum up, I don't know, and I would really like if you find somebody to make me aware of them so I can reach out and relate to them and talk. Because that's one of the sad things about ASCAC, is that before we left, I had wanted us to build a community of scholars that we could talk to, that the people in our organization, we already did it. We have Saber, and we have been studying Egypt when I reached out to the other people, right? And brought all these scholars together and all the advocates of Egypt. But we couldn't sustain it. And we can come back another time and talk about that, but they were not able to sustain it. I got a serious analysis of it, but it's enough to say that's a project, and I would like to see Jose participate in that, of helping us to groom and cultivate scholars that create a community of scholars that build on each other's knowledge and fervor and commitment. And then, this is the key, use it, not to claim big things, but to do what? Improve our lives, to push our lives forward as a people, to ground us, to give us a grounding, to give us a basis of text that help us to ground ourselves, orient ourselves, and direct our lives toward good and expansive ends. So that's what I would like to do. And I'm afraid of them. Now, you can read the Egyptologists, but you've got to interpret them. What I use them mainly for is counterpoint, and also because they have access to the original text that I can't get except going through them and the library, right? So I do that, but then I do my own translations, right? That's the important thing. And also, they create a counterpoint dialogue for me. Your truth not tested. Truth not struggled over is not really tested. So you get your greatest test, not from your mother and your father, who just going to reaffirm you, right? But going in the enemy's camp, turning the table over, or at least changing the agenda and putting yours on there. You know what I mean? So I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the struggle. I enjoyed the reinterpretation. And so I would really encourage all those people listening that are interested in studying the culture and creating a scholarly community. Contact us. We'll be glad to work with you and continue to work. We began in 1984 with the founding of ASCAC and the first ancient Egyptian conference. Mhm.
All right. Great question, Minister Bill. And now, let's see. Okay, Michael Kubaka, go ahead. And then,
yeah, so Dr. Maulana Karenga, thank
How you
you
doing?
as always. And just today, I got about 7 pages of notes. But my question is this, and I don't know, maybe just me missing so much. So you talked about world beings and the Wali Wegu. Can you speak on that and share where I should dig a little deeper to know more about that?
Yeah, Bo, appreciate what you said about it, saying correctly. See, we teach that we must always have an expansive conception of ourselves, right? We are Africans, right? But we're also human beings, and we're also world beings. African is our unique and equally valid and valuable way of being human in the world. So we want to start with the knowledge that we're African, but then we got to, when we expand our concerns, we have to have human concerns also about other human beings, right? Second, how we relate to them, you know, how we are interrelated with them. And then finally, we have to see ourselves as integral to what we call nature, right? That's why when we talk about 5 major struggles in history, the first one begins with the struggle with nature, not against nature, but a struggle with nature to make nature an ally rather than an enemy. If we don't struggle right, nature can become an enemy, like diseases out of control, the climate change, et cetera, all those things, because we're not respecting nature in the way that we should, right? So we have to always think of ourselves as world beings, right? Egypt was the light of the world, not just the light of Northeast Africa or the light of Africa, but the light of the world, the navel of the world, the temple of the world. That's our concept. That's us. We have to be the light of the world, the navel of the world, and the temple of the world, right? Without being arrogant, without being hegemonic, without needing to claim like the European that we created everything and nobody else did anything, and you know everybody's subordinate to them. We don't do that. Our oppressor can never be our teacher, and even our allies can't be our tutor. We must speak our own special culture truth and make our own unique contribution to how this world is engaged and transformed. For as Nana Mary McLeod Bethune taught us, our task is to remake the world. It is nothing less than that. And if we don't see ourselves as Wali Wengu, as world being, we'll ask, what that got to do with us? But Nana Malcolm, Haji Malcolm, said that we must always discuss where we fit in the world scheme of things. That's imagine our ancestors in 1930, 1920, thinking of themselves in world historical terms. That's amazing. So we're not just ghetto citizens, right? We are Africans, we are human beings, and we are world beings concerned with the ongoing African and human good and the sustained well-being of the world. Because guess what? We're here. The guy is actually destroying the planet. We need to resist him. His plunder, pollution, and depletion of the world is affecting us. The guys put the seasons out of whack. Just imagine that. The seas are rising, glaciers are melting, whole islands are sinking, right? We got summer and winter, winter and summer. We shouldn't say anything about that. Of course we should. And that's why I brought up George Washington Carver, who was an environmentalist before the word was put there, but we were sensitive to and in contact with our natural selves. See, when people say I'm a natural woman, I'm a natural man, what does that mean, right? It means we're located in nature. We try to act natural the way we are as human beings, but we should also act natural the way we are as natural beings, as world beings. It's a long conversation. I don't want to take too much time, but I hope that answered your question, but if not, please feel free to intervene.
All right, Sister Keisha, Baba Jeff, Minister Thurston, and Minister Makalisi, Seba. So the last person for the question is Malika. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Go ahead, Sister Keisha.
Malika. I'll try to do that. If we're going to end exactly on 12:30, then I'll make sure I do short answers.
You know what? We're not gonna end right at 12:30. You know what?
Okay.
It's such a full day. You have so much knowledge and wisdom. So yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you for continuing to open our hearts and our minds. Since we were introduced to you in 1984, when members of WOSE were at the conference.
Yes, that was beautiful.
Since that time, we've been privileged to study and learn. And so my question is, how do we get more Husias? We've been trying and trying, and they seem to be out of print. Can you direct us? Can you help us?
Okay, so the owner and publisher of Sankoi Press is on the line. So I'm sure if you write Sankoi Press or call them, they can get it. Now, especially since you're making this public appeal right here. She won't miss it, right? She won't miss it. And
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Not to jump the line, but during the service, on behalf of WOSE, I've already sent an email to Sankoi Press about 30 minutes ago.
Good.
In bulk, so I'll be waiting for that reply.
Good. Thank you so much. That's beautiful. And there's her answer right there on the chat. Yeah.
All right, Baba Jeff, go ahead. Go ahead, Baba Jeff.
Santi Sana, Dr. Karenga, for your presence, your good words. I first was introduced to you when I went to UC San Diego, and you came there many times, and I appreciated the words then, and I've grown very much since then.
Thank you so much.
A question about these two concepts, Geru Ma,
yes,
self-mastered, and you didn't mention it, but I think you alluded to it in the Odu Ifa, the good condition, Ipo Rere. I think that's what it is.
Yes.
So how, in the world today, do you have some people or places or communities that you think are practicing their self-mastery and there's the good condition, bringing about a world through the good condition?
Very good. That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Now, self-mastery. So the first thing is the self-mastered person, as I said, is the person who is able to master the heart and mind. And that means discipline the heart and mind for good purposes. So discipline is a self-imposed order of reasonable restraint and sustained and focused initiative directed toward development and excellence. So the first part of that is self-imposed order of reasonable respect. See, the people that, just like that and go on and talk and relate, that's not even African. We don't have a tradition of monks, right? We don't go off where we live in the midst of our people, right? And so what we need to do is to make sure that when we discipline ourselves, it does not diminish our relations with others, it enriches them, right? So a self-imposed order of reasonable restraint and what? You can't just restrain yourself, you got to have initiative, sustained and focused initiative. You got to be doing something, you got to have purpose, right? Our purpose is to bring good into the world. and not let any good be lost, Odu Ifa says, right? And so that is why the honored ancestors in the Hosea says that one who can master the heart and mind has the equivalence of all the teachings. Just think about that. All the teachings can be reduced to that one teaching. Master the heart and mind. Again, why? Because all the vices you want to avoid and all the virtues you want to acquire, cultivate it, and live, guess what? They depend upon your mastering this heart and this mind. Second, Odu Ifa. Odu Ifa, Brother Jeffrey was talking about Odu Ifa. Odu Ifa is a text. See, I went back to school to get a second doctorate in ethics because I thought that ethics is the most important way we can engage in the conversation today and solve the problems that face us internally and externally, right? In the community, in society, and in the world, right? And I knew then that Africans had the oldest texts that we could read on ethics. And I wanted to bring those into Black studies and into the Black movement and into the Black community, just like I wanted to do the ancient Egyptian or Martian ethics. So and I wanted to have, it doesn't mean I wanted to erase Christian, Muslim, and Jewish, Black Jewish ethics. It just meant that I wanted to show the diversity and I wanted to get the original ones, right? The ones at the beginning with the people's own mouth, the own voice, right? And so here we are with Odu Ifa the same way. So Odu Ifa for us in Kawita, one of the most important, if not the most important chapter, is chapter 78 of Odu Ifa. And in it, it begins and says, let's do things with joy, for surely humans have been divinely chosen to bring good into the world, right? Later on, it says, we're supposed to increase good and not let any good be lost. I like that, not let any good be lost, right? And it says also, what Jeffrey is referring to, it says that one day, all kinds of people came to ask the master teacher, Orunmila, witness to the creation of the world, asked, can we stop going back and forth to heaven and just stay in heaven? Why do we have to come back to earth, right? And so he said to them, you know, the Yoruba at the time, the people who follow Ifa believe in reincarnation. That's why they have names like Babatunde, father has returned, right? Iyatunde, mama has returned, etc. So they said, we don't need to be reincarnated anymore. We need to stay in heaven because we're spiritual beings and we just came down to earth to make it good. Well, he reminded them that's what they came for, to make the world good. And that there are conditions in the world now that don't make the world good. And we have a moral obligation. He said, you cannot stop going back and forth to heaven and earth until you help create the good condition that Olodumare, God, has ordained for everyone. I mean, that's a beautiful concept that our salvation, like our liberation, is collective. We can't be saved by ourselves. We can't just fly away by ourselves. I just like that. You know, we studied that. I teach that in school. I have a class in which I teach African ethics. And what the people then said is, what is a good condition? And Rumela says, a good world. A world where, first of all, there has knowledge of all things. Imagine them saying knowledge first. They would say, and see, back to Imani now. We're one of the most, if not the most religious people in the world, I know, right? So why do the Egyptians and the Yoruba in this place, why don't they say the first criteria is God? Because atheism is not even a rejected possibility. Nobody's talking about that. Everybody assumes you're going to be off. You're going to respect God and you're going to do God as you understand. The question is, what will you do with your fellow human being? What will you do with the world? That's the problem, right? You know, like Mom and them used to say, maybe from a poem, your arms are too short to box with God, right? So, you know, there's not even a question of that. The question is how you would live your life in relationship to other humans and to the world. So they said, first, knowledge everywhere. Second, happiness. I mean, knowledge, full knowledge, happiness everywhere, right? Then the end of anxiety and hostile situations, right? The end of fear of death, disease, loss, litigation, issue. I mean, witches, wizards, and issue. So to get away from things that threaten us and that we feel we can't handle, but have the knowledge and the human relations to solve this, right? The end of poverty and suffering. That's what we're looking for. The end of fear of nature, fire and water, right? And to use it rightfully, the energy. There's a lot of conversation. And then it said what we need to create a good world. You know, we need sacrifice. We need character, right? Iwa is what we're looking for. We need character. Character is a relatively stable disposition toward doing good. Can we do that? We know we're not going to do good all the time, but can we count on you 99%, maybe 95%, right? That's why we always say when we talk about the English of the South, we say, if we could just practice some of these principles some of the time, a whole new change would come in our lives and in the world, right? So this good condition is a shared condition. The end of poverty, the end of war and hostility, the presence of peace. And one of the first criteria for creating a good world, right? The criteria of what a good world is distinct from what you got to do to get to a good world. The first thing, like the first thing in the criteria, is wisdom, wisdom adequate to govern the world. And the word govern in Yoruba, akoso, means to pull people together for good purposes. That's our life depends on this, Black people, pulling people together, gathering together people for good purpose. In fact, the Odu says, all good comes from gathering together in harmony. The whole world was created in collectives, right? There's a beautiful verse on Aswada, which is the gathering together in harmony. I think I've spent a long time. I didn't want to go that long, but it's just beautiful. I'll come back and lecture on Odu Ifa sometime.
Thank you. That would be great. Minister Rana Thurston, please come forward.
Good day, what's up? Sebe, Dr. Karenga.
How you doing?
I am well, Alasiani. I am very familiar with you through ASCAT and through my mom, who you're familiar with, which is Queen Esther Thurston. Okay. Yes.
Good.
And yes, thank you. And grew up on her skirt tail, going to ASCAT meetings and ASCAT symposiums and everything. And so I have a very special place in my heart for ASCAT. And I heard you earlier when you mentioned the desire to get together or establish a group of scholars who would be working for the betterment of our people. And I especially appreciate when you said that these aren't scholars for scholars' sake. These aren't a group of scholars for the sake of, these aren't your words, these are my words now, puffing themselves up and being able to say, I'm a part of that group, but actively being involved in the communities, actively being involved and helping bring forward the different projects that we're involved in throughout all of the different communities. And that's something that really resonates with me. And so I just want to, as a newly ordained minister of WOZE, because I did hear you say you want WOZE to be in that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I want to step forward and say I would definitely put myself forward as being someone who would help with that. Whether that is in helping determining who these people are, how they would be involved, getting in touch with them, whether it's something as meager as correspondence and phone calls. I don't care necessarily what it is. I care that we get it done. And just the idea of this to me is working to bring ASCAC to where we need it to be, we as a community, in order to move forward. So I'm going to put my phone number into the chat. And I know that you have people here who are supporting you. I think it'd probably be better for me to put my number out there and that person can pick it up. And then let's get it going. Let's get it started.
Yeah. I think one of the things we have to recognize, and thanks so much for that, Minister Thurston. One of the things we have to recognize is we have to start at the very basic. Like when we started our organization, we had what we call just a circle of 7, right? We started and then we grew into a national, international organization. We always were a vanguard of this. We never tried to be a movement organization because we had a discipline that most people couldn't follow. But I built, and our organization built a lot of Black United Fronts, right, across the country, so that we could have what I call operational unity, unity in diversity, unity without uniformity. And I saw ASCAC as that. We weren't able to do what I thought our original goals were, but I don't give up because of that. I keep on. And we're going to start SABRE classes. And so if y'all are interested in that, that would be another way that we begin to do it. So let's do what we can with what we have. And then as we grow, other people see the good works and therefore they will be interested in it also.
Absolutely, absolutely. Should I leave my number in the chat or should I take someone's name from you? You please tell me what would be the best move.
Yes, we'll get it out in the chat.
Trying to be about it.
Yes,
okay.
You can do it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Minister Makalisi, go ahead.
Makalisi.
Dr. Karenga, good to see you again. Good to hear you again. And I don't necessarily have a question. I just want to share with the WOSE people, this is not your first time that you've been at WOSE, and thank you. I don't remember the year when I was still there in Oakland. I'm living now in Virginia. But I do remember that, you know, we contacted you, invited you to come, and you did come. And and you paid your own expenses to come to Oakland. You brought your wife with you and a couple of other people. But we did write you a check for your expenses for coming. But you know, you being one who practiced what you preach, practice what you teach. It was maybe a month or so after you made that presentation there for us that we received a check back from you that here's, I think it was, you know, half of what we paid you. You sent it back, you know, like, you know, just, and we were surprised. I mean, shocked maybe, like, but here is someone who practices what he teaches, that these principles about being a man of the world, humans of the world. Well, you know, recognizing WOSE is not a rich place. And so they invited me, and I got a chance to come and share with them and just truly appreciate that experience that we had, that I had with you. And I continue to read your materials, your book, Lucia. I wrote a little book myself on Kwanzaa and Nguzo Saba. And so just giving thanks for your work, for your spirit, for the inspiration. I was there when you came to Oakland in the summer of 1966 or 7, that over on Grove Street is now, it's called Martin Luther King Boulevard, to the Black House, and shared with us this event, this development that
you don't have a tape of that, do you? We're trying to build archives for our organization. So I'm reaching out to anybody that might have any tapes of me lecturing or having conversations with them. If they could send it in to us. There's some money involved, we can certainly pay you for it and pay you also for the postage, but also for the—
Yeah, I'm not aware of a tape. WOSE didn't do a taping, but like I said, that presentation changed my life.
I'm talking about the one in the 60s. I'm going back to that.
Yes.
Tim, you usually tapes mine now, But I'm talking about all the way back in the 60s, or if you know somebody that might have it. We're just trying to build an archive from the 60s on up.
Well, maybe we can get that word out, and maybe
That'd be good.
I'm not aware of that. But
that's okay. Asante, thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much for again. Last thing I want to say is that the Kwanzaa, the Nguzo Saba values, the tradition changed my life, liberated me from Santa Claus and and a whole bunch of other negative, destructive stuff, and was the main contribution that I made to giving Wolfsay Community Church of the Sacred African Way life was we're going to embrace Kwanzaa and the Nguzo Saba in our community. And so here we are. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now Seba Tulivu Jadi. I hope I'm saying that correctly. I apologize if I didn't.
Yes, you said it correctly. Asante Sana, brother, for your understanding.
Karibu.
Asante Sana. I want to say to you, Seba, Dr. Maulana Karenga, Asante for this excellent, detailed, comprehensive, and thoughtful lecture that you gave this afternoon. And we really enjoyed what you said and taught on in terms of the systemic person. And I wanted to ask, is there anything else you would say to us about developing a disposition towards developing the ability to listen, hear, and comply with what is said in our day-to-day activities, Seba Maulana? Again, Asante for excellent lecture you gave today. Asante Sana.
Asante Sana. Yeah, Asante for that, Seba Tulivu Jadi. We used to define Kawaida as an ongoing center of the best of African thought and practice in constant exchange with the world. But we add sensitivities because we don't just think, we also feel. And even though when I explained thought, I put the sensitivity to it, I thought it merits, and this is what Kawaida is ongoing, since it's open textured, right? So I then added sensitivity to it because of my teaching on Ib. To be an Ibic person is to be a thoughtful person. And the thoughtful means that we think deep, that's the mind, but thoughtful also means you're sensitive to others. That was a very thoughtful act you said, right? Oh, that point, you're very thoughtful on that point, right? So what I wanted to do was to include that sensitivity dimension, because a lot of our creative work is based on soul, which is creativity, sensitivity, and impulse or improvisation. So sensitivity is central to who we are. We are an Ibic people, thoughtful, deep thinking, and also deep feeling. And the Sejemic person is above all a morally sensitive person, who listens, that is, gives rightful attention, who hears, who gives empathetic understanding, and third, who complies, that is, acts appropriately according to what is requested or required. What people ask of us, that is rightful, but also what is required even when they don't ask. Sometimes people have problems asking, right? So I always give an example. This is real quick. It seems like it might be a diversion, but it's not. One of the things I do when I start off my ethics class, I ask people, how many people give to the homeless on the street that ask for money? People say, well, I give them, but I won't give them direct money. I go and get something for them and give them some food. I said, well, just think about that. First of all, there's the sense of indignity even asking you, the vulnerability to being rejected. And just how many people want to ask other people, beg people? So you're adding injury, right? By actually making them feel you don't even think they got enough sense to use the money the way they need to. And maybe they don't want food. And maybe they don't want that little small hamburger you get because they're not even eating that. You know what I mean? Why are you going to monitor them and police what they do with the money? So I said, here's an attitude I have. And we'll talk about it as we go. Right now we can, we're doing the semester. I want you to see what you think. I give because it's part of my ethical tradition. And for me to actually be faithful to my tradition, I give. I'm from a tradition that says we measure the moral quality of any society by how it treats its most vulnerable. And therefore, all of us say, give food to the hungry, water to the thirsty, clothes to the naked, and a boat to those without one. Be a father for the orphan, a mother for the timid, a raft for the drowning, and a ladder for those trapped in a pit of despair. So I give it for my tradition. Second, I give it because that's part of my identity. That's how I know I'm generous. That's how I know I'm faithful to my tradition. We do it by practice. You know, if I'm a doctor, I got to do some medicine, right? If I'm a teacher, I got to teach, you know. So if I'm a generous person, I got to give, right? So that's how I know myself, right? It's not only how I honor my tradition, it's also how I know myself. And so I'm saying this because the Sejimic person is, first of all, a feeling person, not a judgmental, criticizing, and assumption of superiority person, but seeing, listening first, being rightfully attentive. Tulivu Jadi in Sabre class gave us an example, and he said where he worked downtown, there's a brother that was asking for money, and he stopped to give him some and talked to him. And he was getting ready to give him some after he talked to him and greeted him. He said, no, I don't want your money. What I wanted was recognition, and you gave that to me. Recognition as a fellow Black person, as a fellow human being, right? That's so important. That's a Sejimic person. Sabre Tulivu is sensitive to this person. The vulnerability of being on the corner without housing, right? Without the money, without employment, right? Just there. I'm supposed to embrace that person, not insult them or make them feel smaller, right? So just recognition shows the respect we need. That's a Sejimic person. So again, rightful attentiveness. Second, empathetic understanding. I should do it like that. Listening, that is rightful attentiveness. Hearing, giving empathetic understanding. Third, compliance, appropriate action as requested or required. Asante for the question.
All right, Dr. Karenga, we have 3 more questions left. And let me pause here. We had planned to do a litany of sacrifice, but what we're going to do after the last answer for these questions, we're going to put up on the screen. I'm going to ask Baba Jeff to put up on the screen how you can donate to Wose Community Church of Oakland and Wose Community Church of Sacramento, and then we'll dismiss. So Malikia Tawasufi.
Asante, Yebo, Asante Sana. Asante for this excellent lecture today. And I want to say Asante Sana to you, Seba Maulana Karenga, for Dr. Maulana Karenga, for this brilliant lecture. I mean, it was really, really just, like the sacred text says, it was like breath to the nose. You know, it was vital. It's just like what we needed at this time. And I want to say Asante to you for the brilliant presentation, the brilliant lecture, and the beautiful lecture, and you being beautiful presenting it. Want to say also Asante Sana for the visual brilliance. I mean, the way that you interwove the pictures of our ancestors with African art and just bringing us the best of what it means to be African, that was just brilliant, Maulana. It was just, oh God, it was just a trip to the museum and back for a lecture and then back at home with family. So Asante for that.
Asante
and just, Yivo Asante, and just finally, you know, just the, you know, that just the textual truth, the way you presented it so eloquently, is just hearing your voice, Maulana, is soothing to hear our history spoke with your voice. The question that I had, Seba Maulana, is something that you said on the tail end of your presentation. where you were talking about that it was our, and I'll use here, overarching duty to know our past and honor it, to engage our present and improve it, and to imagine a whole new future and forge it in the most effective, the most ethical, effective, and expansive ways. And I was wondering, Maulana, would you talk a little bit about how we as African people can engage our present and improve it? Asante.
Okay, well, appreciate what you asked, and thanks for the laudatory remark. And thanks also for being an advocate and member of us and helping to do the work I'm just getting ready to describe. We say that if we're going to improve our present, we have to improve the life of our people, right? And that is through service, struggle, institution building. We have to serve the people, right? We have to serve, and we also add work to this. So work, service, struggle, and institution building. We have to join an organization, or at least work with an organization. And if we can't find one, we still have to serve our people. Let me take from the text here. The text said, service is key to being a Martian person. It says, serve God so he may protect and provide for you. Serve your brothers and sisters so that you may enjoy a good reputation, i.e. be respected. Serve a wise person so that she or he may give you wisdom. Serve a person who serves you. Serve anyone so you can benefit from it, and serve your mother and father so you can go forth and prosper. So service is central. In fact, Dr. Martin Luther King said, everybody can be great because everybody can serve. You don't have to write a book or invent nothing, but you can serve people. In fact, all the great people that we honor, religious people, social people, from the founders of religion, right? Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, the rest of them, Orumila, whoever you think. The reason that we talk about this, and the Alder Saber in the Martian tradition, is that they served people. They served the world, right? And that's their greatness. I'm back to the Husidic verse. The wise are known by their wisdom, but the great are known by their good deeds. And those good deeds are service. Nana Mary Clavertune says, so live your life in service that even when you lie down in death, you stand tall on the platform of service. I mean, I just think about the beauty of that, right? So join an organization, find a cause, get involved in it. Even if you can't join, get a cause, get an activity that's going on. Help build institutions. One of the things that helps us to last is to build institutions. Kwanzaa is an institution. Our culture center, the African American Culture Center, is an institution. We celebrate our 57th anniversary this year. The organization, us, the African American Culture Center. And it's just a beautiful journey, right? It's a good journey. You know, we're committed to this, but it's through service, work, service, struggle, and institution. Join the struggles that you see out there, right? We're struggling to bring good into the world. And as Nana Malcolm X taught us, wherever Black people are, there's a battle line. Whether you're in the East or the West or North or the South, you and I are in a country that is a battle line for all of us. And even before him, Nana Paul Robeson said, the battlefront is everywhere. There is no sheltered rear. So there's always a place to struggle to bring good in the world. I've said this, maybe I will say, but I always say this and I want to close in this question. In my lectures, we in Kawaida philosophy see struggle as fundamental to what it means to be human. Struggle defines our lives. In Odu Ifa, there's a struggle to be good. All of us do not choose right, good lives or good choice. Don't make good choices. So the Odu said we're all struggling. All of us are just struggling. But I want to tell you how our struggle began. We struggle to come into being. That's called birth. We struggle to make the most out of being. That's called life. And we struggle not to go out of being. That's called the quest for immortality. And at the heart of the struggle of life and the struggle for immortality is the virtue and value of service. Serve. Serve the people, love the people. Respect each other. Speak and seek and speak truth, to do and demand justice. Be constantly concerned with the well-being of the world and all in it. And dare help reveal the overarching movement that prefigures and makes possible the good world we all want and deserve to live in. And that means, which I skipped to, continue to struggle, keep the faith, and hold the line.
Thank you. Minister Shango, you're next, and then Dr. Kandwani.
Yes.
My brother, I must thank you for a totally awesome presentation.
Thank you so much.
And the last time I saw you, it was 1968 on the campus of Howard University.
Is that right? That was a mean one. They made a movie out of that, remember?
Exactly. And also you were sitting in Crampton Auditorium on center stage, introducing us to your concept and to what's been established now, something we call Kwanzaa.
That's right.
And I never forget you sitting on center stage and talking to all of us students. I just want to thank you for that.
Asante to.
Okay, now the other thing is currently I have a cause and I have a service. I'm working with our school, Ile Almade, which has preschool all the way to the 8th grade. And hopefully one day we can go to the 12th grade, but right now to the 8th grade. And so I'm working on like curriculum development, and we have a dynamic director, Baba Jahi, and our school definitely utilizes the principles of Kwanzaa and Nguzo Saba. And I just want to thank you, and I look forward to participating with those scholars that's going to be put together to continue the work. So I just want to Asante Sana you, and may Amen Ra continue to bless you. Thank you.
And may we all be blessed. And wish for you all blessings without number and all good things without it. Thank you so much. And I wanted to say that most of the independent schools have used and do use Kwanzaa, but sometimes you have different levels of attribution. And I just want to say this now. Sometimes people try to deny that I created Kwanzaa. They try to say the ancestors gave it to me or this or something. They don't do that with Dr. Clark, Dr. Ben, and nothing. No other people, they do that. They just do that with me. Or they leave out my name. And I'm appealing to y'all, because I know y'all don't do that. I'm appealing to y'all to tell people, stop that. Give me an attribution or don't use my material. Don't use the Hosea, don't use my, don't use the 7-card verse, don't use the 7 principles, don't do the Kwanzaa. If you can't say who did it, you're denying, it's not only just what you're doing to me, but you're denying Black people and Black young people especially, a model of human excellence and possibility. Why do we study history? We study history first to learn its lesson. Second, to absorb its spirit of human possibility. Third, to extract and emulate its models of excellence and achievement. And finally, to practice the morality of remembrance. And when we don't give attribution, for whatever reason, we actually deny them models of possibility and of human excellence and achievement. Because as Nana Garvey, Anima Marcus Garvey said, what humans have done, humans can do. They might can't do what I did, but they can do similar. I don't do what Nana Malcolm did or Nana Mary McLeod doing, but I build on their teachings and try to do the best I can. I build on my mother and fathers. I can't be my mother and father, but I can represent the best of what they meant to me and to the world. And I don't mind saying the names. In the quotable, I asked that question. This is in 65. I asked the people, why is it so hard to quote Black people? People have favorite elders they might quote, but they have trouble for some reason saying who created Kwanzaa, who created Nguzo Saba, who did the translation for the Hosea, who did the ethical focus and translation of Odu Ifa. You know, we talked about Odu Ifa in a whole different kind of way before we introduced the ethical dimension to it. Just like we talked about ancient Egyptian studies in a whole different way before we introduced Martian ethics. So we need to see that. That's part of history unfolding. And we need to talk about it. You know, not for me personally, although I'm involved, right? But for the principle. I shouldn't say that, not for me, but not just for me personally, but for the principle involved, the practice of it, the honesty, the truth of it, you know, the justice of it. You see, just think about that. Think about that. Why is that difficult? Now, Lady Todd said, doing good is not difficult. I think we need to revisit that. I believe that, you know, I believe that that's the best way we should approach it. But sometimes doing good is difficult. It's easy to do wrong sometimes. It is easier to do wrong. That is why we say in Kawida, we are American by habit and African by choice. And each day we must choose to be African. Each day, Black people, we must choose to be African. We used to say in the 60s, they said, how you doing? We said, just trying to be Black. They said, oh no, I'm already Black. No, you got a dark color. But Blackness is not just color. Blackness is color, culture, and self-conscious practice, consciousness of oneself, and a practice that goes along with that.
All right, Dr. Karenga, we have two more. This sister snuck in there, but we're not gonna deny her. Dr. Kandwani.
Yeah, and I think just to be fair to our audience and you and to Jose Church, I think we should close out now. It's 1, so I think it's good. We did a good hour of it, and so I think.
Can I prevail on you, Dr. Karenga? Just these two, and
I'll be glad to. You know that.
Yeah,
I'll do that for you. And for our people.
All right. Well, just these two, and then we'll.
And that's what I was talking about. Just these two.
Yes. All right. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Sante, go ahead, Kofi.
Kofi said Morehouse.
Yeah.
Oh.
Unmute.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I was about to relinquish my question because I know you are also tired, sir.
No, I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for that. Thanks for your consideration. That's very suggestive of you.
Thank you. I want this notion of the heart and the mind.
Yes.
And the development of the heart and the mind to a point where basically you know everything. You know all of the teaching. The service that we provide, the listening that we do has nothing to do with the intellect. It has to do with consciousness and consciousness development. So I ask you, sir, what have you learned from our ancient teachings that can help us develop our consciousness? We have a consciousness crisis in our community, and the intellect alone won't save us. So that's my question to you.
Okay, so what is the distinction, Brother Kofi? What is the distinction you're making between intellect and consciousness?
The intellect is only a part of consciousness. You've got feelings, you've got emotions, you've got intuition. These are all part of consciousness that have nothing to do with the intellect. It has nothing to do with language. So it's more broad, it's more deep. It's what we came with and we've developed in terms of our intellect and these other aspects. But it's together. It was the consciousness of our people that created the pyramids and that created all of this wonderful knowledge that you've been able to share with us.
So the reason I asked you that is that I thought I was teaching consciousness. I thought when I said, especially when I said the concept of if is both heart and mind, both cognitive in terms of knowledge, but also emotive, and has to do with how we feel as well as how we think. That if we want to take an English word that might sum it up and have this double part, is thoughtfulness and deep thinking. So thoughtful, if I say you are a thoughtful person, Kofi, that means not only do you think deep and carefully and considerately, but you are sensitive and compassionate and have emotions that are respectful of other people. I don't think, and if you read the quotable, I mean, that's my earliest work, is taken out of a minute of my lecture. I put emphasis on feelings, right? We cannot escape sensitivity. You might didn't hear me, but let me just go over it again. I define Kawita, my philosophy, as an ongoing synthesis of the best of African sensitivities, thought, and practice, right? So I'm trying to develop a moral sensitivity, a social sensitivity, a relational sensitivity, and a deep thinking and a thoughtful thinking that can be put into practice, that not only seeks to transform society, but seeks to transform ourselves so that we don't imitate and take society with us, pretending we've changed something when it's actually still in us. That is what Fanon meant, Nana Frantz Fanon meant when he said the end of colonialism did not only mean the removal of the Europeans, but the end of European domination, but the end of the the end of the colonized person. So the decolonization is not just the removal of white power in the country, it is also the end of the colonized person in which the white races, white supremacists live. These people live in our consciousness. That is why I said the key crisis in the 60s and even now, the key crisis in Black life is a culture crisis. That until we break the monopoly that the oppressor has on our mind, liberation is not only impossible, it's unthinkable, it's inconceivable. And what you cannot conceive, you can't achieve. I have not moved from that position. People, oh, we need to go. I said that for guns, we can find them anywhere, including on the bodies and in the armory of the oppressor. What we need is for the people to decide the struggle is necessary, and then they would develop both the method and the means. And that has proven correct, right? So I am right with you if you're talking about an overall consciousness. What did I say Black was? Color, culture, and consciousness, right? Can't just be dark. That's some dark white people, right? You can't even have the culture if you don't have the right consciousness. You'll believe putting a kente cloth on a broom and jumping over a broom is an African marriage. When in fact, the white man gave you the broom and he could have given you another work instrument like a hoe or a frying pan to jump over, because what he wanted to do was to erase your memory, to create historical amnesia, to empty our minds and put the filth of his own mind in our mind. And that's what we're struggling to clean out. the filth of the oppressor, right? It's
Right.
just like when people, I'm writing an article this week. I write an article every week for the Sentinel. Get it. And you can also go to our website and get it. It's on the, oh, it's in the chat. Okay. So I'm writing an article this week on what people call respectability politics. So what that does is make people feel this is a downside. Well, you certainly know, I think that the white man can't tell us anything, even time. So that had nothing to do. Our oppressor cannot be our teacher, right? So I'm not talking about that. Like Malcolm said, you be responsible to the people, but you got to be irresponsible to the oppressor. You don't owe him anything except struggle. So I just wanted to be clear before I go on. But you got respectability politics, which is a veil for just doing what you want to. It becomes a veil for doing what you want. I don't think that. We've got to have righteous order to have righteous people. Well, who determines what's right? Well, we know we're not supposed to rape children or kill or torture or do other things that people do to people, just invading people's country and killing them at will. You're not supposed to have sex with your mama. So we do have some rules, right? So we got to stop lying and pretending we don't have any rules. And the question is, what works best for us as a people? That's why the Nguzo Saba is hard to argue with. We need to be unified. And we don't need to unify with people that aren't principle. We got to have unity that's based on principle, purpose, and practice, right? And so the practice and the values are key, Brother Kofi. We got to have a consciousness rooted in these values, in the 7 principles, and also in their practice through the 7 cardinal virtues. We got to speak truth. We got to do justice, right? We got to act properly. There's certain things you can't say to your mama and your father without them losing status. You can't say certain things to your friend or to your brother or to your sister. You just can't say anything. You got to be restrained. I know I am, and this is how I came up. I don't give this up. Again, the oppressor can't be my teacher. I don't do things as a fad. I don't have my blackness on like a yellow wig I take on off at night and then put it back on in the morning. No. And that's why I say you're not black because you claim to be. You're black after you come back home, having gone out during the day. Yes. What's left of you? That's the blackness. What's left of you, that's you. And that is why I end here saying our struggle, Kofi, and all the audience has always been a dual one, a struggle to be ourselves and to free ourselves. But we can't be ourselves if we don't free ourselves. And we can't fully be ourselves unless and until we fully free ourselves. And that's what we're struggling with. So I don't disagree at all. It is central consciousness, but it's a consciousness that must have a practice. That's what we have to insist on, not simply consciousness existing by itself, but consciousness rooted in and evidenced by a constant and consistent practice. A constant and consistent practice. That's what we're coming for if we have consciousness.
Thank you, sir.
Asante. And now the last question from Seba Chimbuko Tambo.
Asante Sana, Minister Imhotep, I appreciate you allowing me to get in this last question. Now, Asante Sana, Dr. Karenga, you teach that African means excellence, and certainly your presentation and the conversation you've had with us has been excellent. I wanted to ask this last question. You talked a lot about a very full and beautiful presentation about struggle, about our moral obligation to struggle to build the world that we want and deserve to live in, about serving our people, about disciplining our heart and mind, and a lot of other instructions that you shared with us.
Seba.
And you also shared the Odu Ifa teaching, let's do things with joy. Hey. So I want to ask if you would end with talking about how do we do all of this and at the same time do it with joy. And certainly the way you approach life is with joy, and your longevity is an example of that and a model of that, doing things with joy. So you could end with talking to us about how do we do all of this with joy.
Mm-hmm. Appreciate what you said, if I understand correctly. Asante Seba Chimbuko Tembo. I take that very seriously. I've always wanted to master my heart and mind so that fads, fashions, pressure, oppression, injustice doesn't destroy my will to live and to be happy and to create space for others so we can do it together, because we believe in Kawida, freedom is indivisible. This is one of the most important, we're talking about living practice text. One of the most important texts that we can bring up on that is Nana Harriet Tubman, who, having freed herself, stepped across the line, felt so nice and was so happy, but then became sad because she said, all the people I love, all the people that are close to me are still back there in a plantation, in a Holocaust of enslavement. And I declared that day, I would spend the rest of my life bringing them to freedom so they could enjoy this, right? And so at that moment, she redefined freedom from individual escape to the collective practice of self-determination in and for community. She realized, and this is the answer to your question, she realized, this is the core, all of it, she realized if you're a righteous person, you can't be happy by yourself. All great good is a shared good. Sisterhood, brotherhood, love, marriage, parenting, all of this is shared good. And so is freedom, and so is justice, and so is security, and so is happiness. And so I'm happy because I realize there are three basic aspects to our culture, to how our culture is created. History, oppression, resistance, and the internal creative capacity to create free space of freedom and meaning, and creativity in spite of what's going on. That's been the beauty of Black people, demonstrating their resourcefulness, their resilience, their adaptive vitality. That's what I meant when I talked about Nana Howard Thurman, talking about us being able to ride the storm and remain intact. Nana Gwen Brooks saying that we must conduct our very blooming in the noise and whip of the whirlwind. And Nana Annie Barrows saying we are people that specialize in the wholly impossible. And there's a beauty in that. There's a joy in that if you read it right. And our oppressor must not be our teacher. He teaches us to be mad and angry, to come on television and radio and talk bad about Black people. He has created a pathological conversation that most people, many people, all right, I don't want to generalize, many people embrace. And so they'll tell you, we ain't done nothing, ain't nothing changed. Oh no, we don't have the problems that Nana Harriet and Nana Frederick Douglass had, and Nana Sojourner Truth, and Nana Robert Perry, and Nana Martin Delaney, and Nana David Walker. We don't have them problems. We don't even have the problem my mother and father had. You know what I'm saying? During the Holocaust, during the savagery of segregation. So we're not in the Holocaust of enslavement. We're not in the savagery of segregation and lynching the way it was. Yeah, they're still killing us in the street, right? But we have pushed back some of the boundaries of oppression, and we've got to keep going. I'm gonna tell you this, I got to go. Look at this. I forgot, Timber just reminded me, I got an international Zoom I'm supposed to be on. Look at it, but this is important. Listen, I like science fiction. And I was watching Star Trek, and one of my most instructive episodes is the one where they come to this planet called Tiddler's Ford. And you're not supposed to go there because they can take your mind and make you feel you haven't done what you did. And that's the European. He'll make you feel you haven't done what you did because he don't want to admit he's been beaten. So every time they would blow a hole in the rock with their phaser, they would cover it up. So you wouldn't even know you did it. So the European not only says that himself, he puts that in the mind of the people and tell them you haven't done anything. And that dismisses all our history, all our achievement. We haven't done anything. What a strange way to talk about ourselves, right? But now personally, we won't let him say that. But collectively, he has worked hard to segment us. That's why we say in Suruj's Tah, in relationships. We must raise up what is in ruin. We must repair what is damaged. We must rejoin what is separated. We must replenish what is depleted. We must set right what is wrong. We must strengthen what is weakened. And we must make flourish that which is fragile, insecure, and undeveloped. And we have to be happy about it. I enjoy the struggle. I enjoy the debate. I enjoy the confrontation. I enjoy the education, mobilization, organization, and confrontation. You got to enjoy what you do. I enjoy what you do. My name tells you what I'm into. Maulana, that's the name people gave me in the movement, master teacher. We introduced that concept. Now everybody's a master teacher, but in 65, Maulana meant master teacher. That's what we used to say in the organization and in the people in the movement. Then second, that's Swahili. My second name is Zulu, because I'm Pan-Africanist, right? And Davizita. Brother said, you want to shock his praise name. It just means, and Davizita means constant concern to the enemy. He's always trying to find a way to destroy me, right? And that means I'm a constant soldier. So I'm a master teacher, I'm a constant soldier. And my last name, which I had first, and I first chose myself, is Karenga, keeper of the tradition, keeper of the ways of our people. And by culture, I mean the totality of thought and practice by which a people creates itself, celebrates, sustains, and develops itself, and introduces itself to history and humanity. And it occurs on at least 7 levels: history, religion or spirituality and ethics, social organization, economic organization, political organization, creative production, which is art, music, literature, dance, etc. And finally, ethos, the collective psychology you achieve as a result of thought and practice sensitivity in those other 6 areas. So be happy. Let's do things with joy. We're winning. We're winning. And when we fight and we're serious, we're winning. Because every day they don't defeat us, we've won. They got an overwhelming force. They're looking at you now in your house without you knowing it. Rescue me if I'm wrong. They got you taking around a phone that monitors everything you do, including your breathing. Rescue me if I'm wrong. But we have not been defeated. It's like Haiti and Palestine. All that they're doing to them, they have not defeated them. We have not been defeated, Black people. And every day we exist and continue to struggle, we have undermined the evil intentions of our oppressor and turned ashes into his mouth.
Ashe. Ashe. Give thanks.
Stay strong, Black people.
Hey.
Give thanks and praise for all of that. For Dr. Karenga, you can do better than that. Come on.
Oh,
Ashe, Ashe.
Stay strong.
Sisters and brothers, sisters and brothers, sisters and brothers, sisters and brothers, I don't want to stifle your excitement. We've gone way over time, but we wanted to hear. You know, there's a saying in another tradition. It's Black, but it's in the Indus Valley. It's called Upanishad. There's a book called the Upanishad, and that means sitting close to the teacher, listening from mouth to ear. When I traveled to Kemet with Dr. Ben in 1981, they said it was 42 years of instruction, and the way that they received it was from mouth to ear, and that's what we received today. So I did not want to stifle that, but I'm going to ask Baba Jeff, because people are going to get on me. I'm going to ask Baba Jeff to put up where we can donate. I'm going to apologize to Bobby and Ed. We're not going to read the litany of sacrifice, but here is where you can donate to WOSE Oakland. You can go to wosecommunity.org, or you could do snail mail at 8924 Holly Street in Oakland. And the same with Sacramento. WOSESAC.com. Thank you, Diane. Glad you came. And you can send it to P.O. Box 5271. And I would be remiss if I did not say that. But it's not all about donations. It's not all about money. But these are the things that are essential in working with organization. The Soledad Prison Poets had a poem. It was called America the Pimp. You got everybody on the whole stroll, even you. And one of the lines in that is, romance without finance is nonsense. And so likewise, liberation and organization without finance is nonsense. And so if you will, please choose one of these or both of these to donate to WOSE Community. We've been in existence for over going on 43 years now, I think. And that will be December 7th. And we'll be sending out notices.